Here with us now in our newsroom is pediatric specialist at Franciscan Health, Dr. Brittany Corbusario. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.
So we have this new virus that is emerging. What is this virus, RSV? And what is the difference between RSV and COVID-19?
Yeah, good question. So RSV stands for Respiratory Syncytial Virus, big word, and it's actually been around and named since the 50s. It's very different from COVID-19. When you think of RSV, it's one of the biggest causes of the common cold, especially in toddlers and small children. It's very different from COVID in the way that it's transmitted as well as the symptoms that it causes.
Okay, so the transmission is like it's the droplets, it's the coughing, it's the way in which that would be a similarity. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
they're both transmitted by droplets. RSV is the bigger size droplets, and it's more about touching them and then touching your mouth and your eyes or your nose. Whereas COVID is a small droplet in the air that you inhale or that lands on your mucous membranes, like your eyes or your mouth.
And I also heard that this can also live on surfaces like doorknobs or tables, and so that's very interesting.
Yes, it does live on surfaces for quite a bit, a
Mhm.
few hours.
And the signs and symptoms we talked about: coughing, sneezing, wheezing, um, feeling loss of appetite. I had read from the CDC. Would that be accurate?
Yes, absolutely. So that's most of the time how it presents in children. They have trouble breathing. They have a lot of mucus, which makes it harder to breathe because small children breathe out their noses. And then COVID, as we know in children, doesn't present like it does in adults as often. And so you don't get a whole lot of mucus and congestion and coughing in children with COVID. But you
Well,
certainly can.
I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time?
But you can. It's just not as
It's just not as common. Okay. And then, Dr. Corbusario, are we facing this typically, from what I understand, it targets young children who may be, well, immunocompromised, but then also older adults. So in terms of children, what age group are we talking about?
Yeah, it can be any age group really. The ones that get the sickest with it are usually the infants or children who are immunocompromised. But you can certainly have an RSV infection in any age 0 up until your teenage years. But most of the time by your teenage years, you've already run into it and have a very good immune response to it, so it doesn't make you as ill.
And we know that COVID does not typically affect younger children or infants. However, are we facing a double threat here? And then following up on that, should we be concerned that this is virus, although it's it's generally now in the southern states, that it could be moving north?
I don't think we should think of it as a double threat. It has been around for a while. COVID is just the newer viral player. And certainly it typically is a fall, winter, spring virus. But with people who are now going out more often, it's coming to light a little bit more and becoming more noticed in the summertime, which is unusual for it. But I don't know that we should see it as a double threat. It's just doing its regular course a little bit later.
Okay. And then, well, it's interesting because this typically appears in the winter months, right? And we're talking about summertime. And I was speaking with one doctor who was saying sometimes just one virus outcompetes the other. And I guess I read something from someone from the CDC, which they sort of said it's making up for lost time, which is why it might be appearing in the warmer weather.
Yes. So viruses, it's survival of the fittest. They're always competing with one another for which one can replicate fastest and which one can infect better. Um, so I think RSV is making its mark because now people are going out more and we're not wearing masks as much and children are going and seeing other children, whereas for a number of months they weren't having any contact with anything outside, which is probably why it was not doing its regular course in the winter.
And we are seeing a number of increased hospitalizations here. And I'm wondering if it has to do with right, like as you mentioned, people are going outside, we're wearing these masks, or children were wearing these masks for so long, and sort of lifting these restrictions maybe have been contributing to the rise the increasing number of cases and hospitalizations.
That may be part of it. Certainly, when children are not in contact and they are wearing masks, they don't spread RSV as well as a whole other host of viruses, which is why most children weren't getting the common cold, for instance, this winter. So I think it's not unusual um, that it is doing a spread now because people are out.
And then I guess last question, it's so interesting that this is in the South, and I'm just wondering, right, there's warmer weather there, but anything else that we could think of? I mean, it's summertime here, it's summertime, summer. So I'm just wondering if just like the CDC's tended to sort of undercount different COVID cases, if that's something that could potentially happen, or this could sort of catch up at some point.
Yeah, it certainly may. We are seeing a number of RSV positive patients around the city here in Indianapolis. No more than we would see in the fall or the winter, but we are seeing some here as well. So um, RSV tends to be a year-round infection in tropical climates in general, so that may be why it's doing a little bit more rampant spread in the south.
Mhm. Okay, and then Dr. Corbisier, anything else you'd want to add? Tell Indiana about this virus that affects children. Anything that we need to do here to perhaps protect our children from this?
Yeah, I would say just common precautions, washing hands, trying to avoid play dates with people who are or have recently been ill. And other than that, you can't keep children in a bubble. So it unfortunately is one of those viruses that they may well come in contact with and contract.
Wow. Wow. Well, Dr. Corbisier, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your insight on this.
Thank you very much.